Yo, welcome to This Can't Be Adultin, the podcast where two guys who probably should have it all figured out absolutely don't.
Careers, money, relationships. No one handed us a manual, so we're figuring it out the only way we know how, with real talk, deep dives, and a whole lot of laughs.
I'm Herb.
And I'm Derek. And if you're out here wondering, am I doing this right? Trust us, you're not alone.
So hit play, relax, and let's figure this out together. Yo, welcome back to This Can't Be Adulting episode 7.
Say that again. What episode?
7.
We're still here, man.
7.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, working on my Spanish.
Look at this guy. Español.
Gracias.
Oh, God. Dude sounded like a character from Dora the Explorer.
That's right. You're gonna, by the end of this, you know what? One of my challenges is going to be to you guys out there by episode. So we're on 7.
We're on 7. Choose your words wisely, brother.
Let me think about this. Hold on, let me get it with a episode. By episode 100, I'm gonna know a little Spanish.
Okay, what does that mean? A little Spanish, though.
We're gonna be able to hold a elementary conversation in Spanish.
Y'all heard it.
You heard it here. We don't lie to you guys. We're gonna keep it true.
That means that if you wanna test them on that, you got to be here till episode 100.
Please start dropping the comments in Espanol. I'll be sure to
Duolingo. We'll see if it works for them, though.
Hey,
Herb, what's good, bro? How you been since the last time, man?
You know what? I'm black. I'm back. I'm black and I'm back.
Yeah.
It's been
very
good.
Very observant.
It's been a good week actually for the show, and again we're getting more. More of you guys are watching the episodes, and we're starting to get more and more feedback. The one thing I will say is that my family out there, Derek's getting all this feedback from your family. Where y'all at?
Big shout outs to my mom. Big shout outs to my aunt, my cousins, all out here. Hey, the Grigsbys.
Where we at?
What's popping?
I tell everybody I got this huge family, the big family, big family. We all about family.
He lying. He got no family, bro.
I need y'all in the comments.
Yeah, do something like that. But straight up, the love we've been getting is insane. And not that this is the reason why we're doing it, but like our first 5 episodes have had less than 100 views on YouTube. This 6th episode is almost at 500 views. Don't know who's watching. I know we don't have 500 friends.
But to all y'all out there,
thank you for spreading the word. No, straight up, big ups. It's a beautiful thing. We appreciate it, and we're just gonna try to continue spitting out good content.
Absolutely.
And boy, do we have a good episode for y'all today. It's gonna be a very deep conversation about one of the touchiest subjects in this country and around the world. Mm-hmm. And what subject is that, Herb?
That is race.
I know. Your racial ethnicity, the color of your skin, the whole 9 yards. And we just figured this is an important topic for us to talk about. And we don't want to sugarcoat anything. And if we offend anyone, let us know. But at the end of the day, we're just going to speak our truth.
That's right.
He's got some real shit that we want to talk about with regards to race, because I think that's a topic of discussion that is taboo for a lot of people. Okay. I feel like a lot of people say, don't talk about race because I feel uncomfortable when you talk about race, and let's avoid it and sweep it under the rug. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think, and this ties in with a lot of topics that we have here on This Can't Be Adulting, whether that's finance, whether that's relationship, the things that we are insecure of, or the things that we're scared of. We don't want to talk about those. We don't want to address those things, so we try to hide behind it. And there's several different ways that we try to go about not having to address those topics.
Yeah.
So,
but we take those head on. So we're gonna have a very spirited and effervescent conversation about that today. Look up the word effervescent. Great word. Not used enough.
Apparently not, because I've never used it.
Not used it. So.
This is the first time. All right, we're here.
So, Herb, man, let's get into it. And how we normally do it in all of our podcasts and all of our episodes, we like to go back. Mm-hmm. We like to go back in time to when we were childs and back to our childhood and talk about these certain topics and where we started from and where we are today. And so the way we want to frame it today and the way we want to start is we want to talk about how we viewed race growing up as kids, and how those views or where those views came from, what influences and what things were taught to us, showed to us to have that impact on us or have that view that we had growing up with regards to race. Because if it's of no surprise, you obviously see that Herb is a black man. You know that I'm a brown man. I'm a Latino man out here. So we are both men of color in the United States of America.
America, baby.
America.
And the fact that we have like different we're raised in different regions of the U.S., which I do think has a huge impact on race and things. And we'll get into all that. But yeah,
we're going to get into that. So I think that's just a great place for us to start, because this is going to be indicative of who we are today and what lessons we may have learned. So Herb, talk to me. Like, what was your view about race growing up, and where did you get that view from?
Well, like as I've mentioned before, small town Arkansas. All of the stereotypes that people would have of race and racism, I would say apply.
Okay.
To Arkansas.
Elaborate.
You know, like the Confederate flag. You're gonna see that. You're gonna see. You know, you're gonna be. For me, growing up, there was, you know, white girls you weren't supposed to date at school. You couldn't date them at school. Teachers would tell on you, call their parents, and you know, if you were dating a white girl, teachers would call their parents and let them know that, you know, little Sarah's dating Herb over there, and that would be a problem. So dealing with that, and just being called a flat out, like I'll give you a quick story of a racial thing that happened to me playing. I spoke about playing sports. The boy loved baseball growing up. In my senior year, I was the only black kid on the baseball team, which was it was fairly common. That's fairly common. Not a lot of black, even though all my family played all the other sports, but you play, you know, we didn't have a lot of black baseball players. But I was really good, so I love playing baseball. We would play against a team in a small town in Arkansas, and this is in 2003. And we pull up to the convenience store. We would, like, right outside of the town that we would go to. We would pull up at the convenience store, get Gatorade and sunflower seeds. We pull up this one small one. We're all getting off. The lady comes out, talks to the coach, and she says, I don't hear the conversation, but he comes back and he tells everybody, get on the bus. And we get back on the bus, and he's like, we going somewhere else. And we leave. I'm like, dang, what's going on there? And he's like, afterwards, he told me that she said that they can come in, but I couldn't come in. And this is in 2003. 2003, I was denied, like, and she didn't say it to my face, but like, just that right there is just, so that lets you know kind of some of the things. And it wasn't, to me, in this town, it wasn't even like I'm shocked this was happening. I was surprised it hadn't happened, you know, more considering the town that we were in. So
sure.
Look up Marshall, Arkansas. That's where it's at.
So is this a sundown town?
Yeah.
If you don't know what a sundown town is, look that up. There's plenty of those in the South. Okay.
So that's where kind of getting, like, you know, kind of what, you know, just give you some idea of what it was like growing up as far as race in a small town Arkansas. But one of the big things that always would stand out was the biggest thing would come from, like, dating. That's where I first started experiencing those, like, race, seeing race and having people be, like, kind of racist towards me, is that you can't, you know, even in elementary school, we're talking about 3rd grade, 4th grade, you know, dating someone, you know, dating a white girl at school, it would be very common for that to get back to their parents, and then there'd be, you know, she'd come in and tell you, like, my parents found out, we can't talk anymore. And I'm telling you, this is small town Arkansas. Like, I grew up, I graduated with a school record 83 people. My best friend and we knew each other from kindergarten. So everybody that knew everybody, and not even that, like, my parents went to school with the parents that was saying this. So, like, I could be like, I'm talking to so-and-so and mention their last name. My mom went to school with, or my aunts went to school with, you know, the dad or whoever it was that was making this. And it's like, oh yeah, she knows who these people are. Like, they've always been known to be this type of race. So growing up, I saw that, like, that was my first experiences dealing with racism, was just being like, oh, you can't date this girl because they're white, because you're black. I'm like, oh, okay, that's crazy.
Was that normal to you? Was that, like, when that started happening, was that more just like, hey, you know, like, I knew this was going to happen eventually, like, it is what it is?
I think that, I don't know if say, like, I knew this was just going to happen because I was ignorant of what racism was, but it became normal. Like, that's what I expected. So, like, even as, like, growing up and starting to date girls outside of my town, even in other towns around the area, it was still the same thing. Like, it wasn't, you could date a girl from, you know, the city, quote unquote, Little Rock, and it could still be the same thing if you're dating, like, a white girl or something. So it was always present, and it was always present, especially when you're talking about, like, interracial relationships or interracial.
When would you say you started to recognize race? Do you remember an age when you started not just recognizing it, but understanding that race was at the forefront of so many things in life where you were growing up?
I don't know if there's a specific age or a specific event that happened, but there's definitely was events that did take place just growing up and you're like, okay, that's racist, and like that's what it looks like. And like you have these, being flat out called the N-word, going into a small convenience store here that, being flat out called the N-word, that's happened. And then just like I say, just growing up, you would run into it. Very prominent at my high school up until 2003 that you would see the Confederate flag. People have it on the front of their trucks.
This is a good story. Tell me a story about what you and John did. And sorry, I'm throwing out names. That's his best friend. Because Herb told me this story a couple of months ago, and it baffled me. But tell the people.
So until everyone probably has a school yearbook, and until 2003, what a lot of the white boys in our town would do is their school pictures would be with them with the Confederate flag proudly behind them in the yearbook. And it's colored. Like the senior pictures, the only ones that are in color.
You can see the right, you can see the red, you can see it all.
You got a big Confederate flag back there, and it's all about Southern heritage. It wasn't supposed to be about race, and then you start getting into the whitewashing of the Civil War. It wasn't about race, and you can go and look into all those, how they tried to, after the Civil War, try to say it wasn't about race.
Of course.
If you look up the state rights that they were fighting over was slavery. So they would have the Confederate flag in their in the yearbook. My friend decided that, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the Confederate flag, black guy, but he's going to have it on fire. And they didn't like that. So instead of having to deal with seeing a burning rebel flag, they decided that they would ban all, rebel flags anymore. So there were no more rebel flags you could take for your senior picture. And that's how they got rid of that.
It's 2003.
2003.
That's fucking wild.
Look that up. 2002, I can show you a Mayflower yearbook, and it's going to have quote unquote friends that I had with the Confederate flag in the back.
I mean, you laugh about it by now, but like, this is some serious shit. And I think the problem of where we are in America today is that people think that racism is gone or not as prevalent anymore because they think that because maybe that's not happening anymore, we're done. I think a lot of times people equate racism with hatred. And that's not necessarily what racism is anymore.
I agree.
Racism is voting people into office that will pass racial policies, right? That's racism. Racism is staying quiet and complicit in the face of actual racism happening in your face, in the face of somebody calling someone the N-word, someone calling a Latino the S-word, spick, by the way, stuff like that, right? Like not saying anything, that's racism. Being complicit, being silent, it's so much deeper than just hatred of a black person or a brown person or whatever the case is.
Yeah. And I will say on the admission part, like I don't know if I necessarily feel like, if you don't speak up against racism, then you're also perpetrating it, I guess, or allowed it to happen. Sure. I don't necessarily think it's on the onus of the person who. It would be great if people did, but I don't think it's the onus is on them to say. To point it out to someone who does it. Now, if it's someone that is a friend of yours or someone in your circle, then I do think it is on the onus of you to say, hey, that's not cool.
And why do you think that? Do you think, are you saying that in the sense of just people have the right to mind their business? Or like, why are you saying, like, what's the reasoning why you don't think it's the onus of someone? Because you're right. I mean, it's a free world. You can do whatever you want.
Oh, yeah.
I get that. Or do whatever you don't want. But like, what's the reason behind that?
I think it is more so like, for effectiveness. Effectiveness. Like if you feel this way and you say something that's out of line and the person don't have a relationship with you and they call you out on it, what's the likelihood that somebody's gonna?
Yeah,
I don't want to put that on people like, oh, you got to starting these confrontations with somebody that says something racist.
Yeah, there's a safety thing involved too, and I get that. I disagree, but like I do understand where you're coming from. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like. Because I don't want to get involved in somebody else's stuff. On the other side, if it was something that was, let's say, two white people get into it, I don't want to get in y'all with what y'all got going on. Even if you say something that I think is like jacked up, I'm like,
but
I don't know you.
But this goes back to what I talked about in the last episode and what you and I were just talking right before this episode. There's a power dynamic in this country, and the power dynamic in this country is that white people hold the power. That's just the reality of it.
I'm with that.
So I always said, as I said in the last episode, men have the onus of making life and world and the rules of society better for women because we have the power. In this country, white people have the power. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, they have the onus to create change. And so they should be the ones speaking up. It shouldn't be on black and brown people to create the change or to instill the change.
No,
like
absolutely we can't.
Doing too much shit.
We would.
Yeah. Because we would. We don't have the power to do that. Right.
Now that part I agree with. I agree with that. When it comes to like and I guess that's where it gets into like race. A racial comment isn't to me like whatever compared to like racial legislation or
sure.
having somebody that's like doing these type of
that's more important in your I feel you're like I get that.
And that probably comes from honestly growing up and being called.
You're just used to it.
Yeah,
and
it becomes
just rolls off your back a little bit. It becomes
numb. Like you're like, all right, like whatever. Like this, I've heard it before. Like it don't bother me. Well, now it does bother me. No, like hold on, let's not get that line. I'm gonna address it if somebody comes like says something like that. Of course, I'm gonna address that. But for the most part, it's like whatever. People are just stupid.
So this is a good segue into because I have a story that has caused me so much regret in my life that I want to talk about with respects to this what we just talked about here.
Okay.
And so for the sake of not jumping around too much, let me go into the story, even though this is later on in my life, because I do want to go into me growing up and what that actually looked like. But because I'm very I got a loud mouth about this shit.
Okay.
I talk a lot. Like race to me is an important thing, and if people think I'm gesturing or whatever the case is, that's not the case. I genuinely care, and I do think it's a big deal. And part of the reason is because, and this was one of the topics that we're going to talk about later on, but it's like corporate America and being the very few men of color in corporate America. And I didn't realize the weight that we all bear on our shoulders being people of color in corporate America, because there's a lot of code switching that happens.
Oh, yeah.
A lot. And I didn't even know I was doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And I had this like coming to Jesus moment during the Black Lives Matter movement when I was with Dell. And one of my directors, whom you met, reached out to me, and he's a black man. And he said, "Hey man, I'm putting together a Zoom meeting with all the folks from Inside Sales that are black." He's like, "But I want you to be there to represent the Latino delegation." And I was like, "Whatever you want, I'll be there. Like, show up." So we showed up, and we're in the Zoom meeting, and everyone was talking. And then he called on me to like kind of speak about like, well, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you feel? And just hearing everyone talk, it started making me going back and just realizing about like how uncomfortable I felt once I left high school, going to college, being like literally, obviously I'd always been a minority, but like the minority.
Yeah.
Like at Boston University, 3% minority.
Okay.
97% white. And freshman and sophomore year, and again, in hindsight, like at the time, I didn't realize it, but it was like my friends, the people I ate with, the people I hung out with were all black and brown people. It was just people I naturally...
So all 3% of y'all.
Yeah. We just gravitated towards each other.
Yeah.
And we hung out, and I did not realize it. Like it was just like, nah, these are the people I'm going to hang out with. They look like me. They talk like me. We like the same things.
Yeah.
Corporate America was the same thing. I worked for a United States senator, and I was, at the time, I believe the only minority in the office. It gave me, at the time, because talking about imposter syndrome, it gave me a lot of imposter syndrome at the time. Now, that doesn't give me imposter syndrome, my ethnicity or anything like that. But at the time, I did.
Yep.
Because I was literally the only Latino or person of color in the D.C. office.
Yep.
So there was a bit of a complex. And then I get into corporate America, and I was one of 8 people in inside sales. And of course, what did we do at lunch? We all sat with each other, and we all ate lunch with each other. I say all this to say it's like I didn't realize how much I acted one way when I was at lunch and talked about certain things when I was at lunch compared to how I spoke the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Because I felt I needed to be better. And I see you laughing, I see you smiling, because I feel like you're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So before I even get into my story, because we're just jumping around, but the conversation's flowing naturally, like talk to me about like what I just said and how that made you feel and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so definitely have that same experiences of being the only minority or only black person, on a team or in an office, and which is crazy to think. I mean, even at the company that you and I met at the time, was it like 2013, 2015, somewhere there. It was like a floor of 400 sales reps. There was no black women.
None.
Not a single, like literally 0 black women was on the sales floor.
There was one I can think of.
Well, then they started to hire some. They started to as
when you started though.
They started hiring them. But when I first started, I was like, how can you have 400 sales reps, all college educated kids in Austin, Texas, and not one black sales girl, woman on the whole floor? But also, but I will say this: that felt normal. It felt normalized, and as I've even
didn't realize it, and we didn't realize it. I didn't realize that this is an issue.
Yep. And then and there's times as I've gotten older where I'll be on an elevator and it's all white people. I'm with my team, but it's all of us, and I'm like, dang, I'm the only black person on this whole elevator. Like, how would they feel if it was all black people and they were the only white person?
Scared to death.
And it's like, man, I'm not scared to death. And it's not like because something that they're doing. It's more so like, it's just the reality of the situation that we live in, and that's so unfortunate because there is a lot of like in corporate America, unfortunately, there is a lot of times where, and I think the biggest struggle, I'll send this back to you. The biggest struggle I have with this that I've come to realize is that my favorite manager was a black guy. I've only had one black manager, but he was really good. He was really structured, military, but he was my favorite manager. And it wasn't necessarily. I won't say this. It was certain elements that him and I could relate and communicate with and relate to because of our ethnicity. And I always try to think of like, man, I wonder how many managers or how many leaders within an organization have ever had to roll up to a black manager. Like, none of my managers have ever had to roll up to a black manager directly. So how do they know how to even deal with when it comes to race? And a lot of them don't know how to do it. They just treat, quote unquote, all of us the same, even though we all aren't the same. And the code switching comes in that I have to adjust to how they communicate, how they relate to each other. How they want to play. They don't. I have to do. Yeah, they don't have to do the code switch. I have to do the code switch so that I can relate to them, to show them back to our previous episode. And you had a great saying on this, making them feel safe. And I know that my role when I first come into the room as the black guy is to make them feel safe, and then I can start to try to explain like how did I then we get into imposter syndromes. How did we get here, and how did I get here? You must be special. Like, right. I got to be special to get here. I'm not special. Yeah. I'm not special, but like we got to be. It makes me feel like, oh, I have to be special to get here, and it's like, I don't know. I'll switch that back over to you, but the code switching is definitely something that I've dealt with, and I always ask myself, like, man, none of my managers ever had to roll up.
This is we delved into this topic, and it was like supposed to be later on in the conversation, but it's such a good conversation because it's such a lived experience that you and I have. There aren't many people in leadership positions that look like us.
Yep.
At all. As a matter of fact, my fun fact is going to be around that at the end of this conversation, which is what I looked up. And I don't think people realize and acknowledge the power of a young child seeing someone that looks like them in a position of power. Like, and it doesn't even have to be in like a nonfiction world. It doesn't have to necessarily mean. I mean, obviously, we want it in like a managerial position, the leader of a company, the leader of the free world. I think that's why Barack Obama was such a transcendental and inspirational person, as well as he's freaking brilliant as well. But like, even in like movies, right? Mm-hmm. Even in popular culture, this is why the Black Panther franchise was such a big hit. Yep. And this is why even the Black Panther 2 was such a big hit when they had a Latino that was playing the antagonist or protagonist on the other side. Like, all these things matter and they're important. And I think, unfortunately, to a lot of white people, not all white people, they don't recognize that because they see that every day. Every day. They see people that look like them in positions of power. And when you see that as a little kid growing up and it's second nature to you, you do believe that you can be that. Yeah. Because it's so natural.
Absolutely.
And so now I'm going to bring it back to when we were back with childhood. And this is why my question was like, to you was, what did we see growing up and how did we view race growing up? Now, I grew up in a small town of Central Falls, Rhode Island. Central Falls, Rhode Island is 48,000 people, 1 square mile. It's around, I don't even know I'm throwing out numbers. Please fact check me, but it's like, let's call it 80% minorities, mainly Latinos and blacks.
That's wild.
Yeah, mainly Latinos and blacks. So it is. It's a bunch of Latino melting, more Latinos than there are blacks. But like, and so there wasn't that many white people.
Yeah.
But we also recognize and acknowledge that we lived in a pretty poor city. Like, it was all multifamily houses, all apartments. The only single family, let me not say it, but the bulk of the single family houses was on the side closest to Lincoln. It's called Shawma Ave, if you guys know Shawma Ave, and that was like the nice area, Central Falls. But like growing up, through culture, it wasn't even necessarily through people I talked to or anything like that, but it's just through culture. Whenever I say culture, by the way, I'm talking about like TV shows and all that shit, the news. Yeah. I was brought up to think that like Black and brown people were like less than, like genuinely, or like naturally we were supposed to be poor and we could get out, but like it was going to take a lot of work. And this is just a little kid, you know what I mean? And I always just assumed if you were a white person, you had money and you were like just better than in a sense. And that's really sad to think about now, you know, because like, again, what you think and what you see as a child is instrumental or detrimental to how you grow up.
So from your like growing up, what were your interactions with, you know, other races? So didn't interact with that many white people because there wasn't that many white people. Like in high school?
No, this is before high school.
Okay.
High school, things got a little bit different because I grew up in Central Falls, Rhode Island. So it was around a lot of Latinos and a lot of Black kids. And the interactions, no, they were good. We were just all kids. We were all just hanging out. Like, we were all from the same place. Yeah. So it wasn't a this versus them or that versus them necessarily. Yeah. It was kind of like we're all in this together.
Got you. Now, do you recall any moments like where race, like did you have a specific moment where you like, oh, this is race here, or was there like a
yeah I think it was around 5th grade where it was like really hit me was the O.J. Simpson trial.
Oh my God, I remember this. All right, tell your story.
The O.J. Simpson trial.
Yep. I was in 5th grade too, Miss Slade. We made her quit after it.
Oh shit, we're gonna have to hear this story. This is either 4th or 5th grade. I can't remember when it was, and I remember he got found
not guilty.
And I remember my ignorance being like, nah, he's fucking guilty. And I said it, and a Black kid was like, yo, shut the fuck up. He was fucking innocent. It said, or not guilty, and blah, blah. And he really took offense to it. Mm-hmm. He was like, he was acquitted. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I didn't realize why. I was like, why are you getting so offended? Like, it didn't really register. And then, like, I ended up realizing, I'm like, obviously when I got older, I ended up realizing. At that time, I just realized, oh, okay, like, it's a Black man. He's Black. Maybe he's on his side. Yeah. Like, that's what I thought. And I'm like, oh, like, race was a very big thing during that trial. You remember that. All over the place.
Absolutely.
You know, in hindsight, you know, now you start thinking about the systemic things that happen, whatever. Because whether he did it or not, they were trying to make an example of a Black man. Yep. And there's way worse things or so many other white folks that could be made an example of. So that's kind of what I realized then. But I remember that very specifically being like, oh, shit, like, the Black community is really rallying around this O.J. Simpson trial. And I remember that being like a pivotal point in my life around the race thing type of a situation when I was coming to, I was like 9, 10.
Yep. No, I remember it clearly only because similar to you, I didn't know, like, I knew who O.J. Simpson was just through sports, right? Playing games. I loved the Naked Gun movie, so I knew who O.J. Simpson was. But whenever it happened, like, I was like, oh, okay, like, it wasn't that big of a deal to me. However, when the trial started, you know, it started hitting my parents. And if you guys remember, if you lived through this, it was a year-long trial. My parents started talking more and more. Family started talking more and more. And so when the verdict came, I was in Miss Sladen's class, 5th grade, and not guilty. She went and cried, and I was saying, yeah, because my family was telling me that all I knew was that, hey, we want him to be guilty. Innocent. He was. I'm like, yeah, she went and cried, and I was like, why is she crying?
She a white lady?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely white lady. So yeah, she went and cried or whatever, and I was like, of course she's gonna be crying because, you know, she wanted this Black guy to be sentenced and go to jail for life. I mean, you know, whether OJ did it or not, I'm sure we all got our opinion on that.
That's not what this is about. Not what this is about.
But that was definitely an instance of racism that definitely stood out. A moment of racism that definitely stood out.
Where you realize it. And speaking furthermore about, like, positions of power and leaders, like, teachers were leaders. And it was so funny because in preparation for this conversation today, I started thinking about all my teachers. I didn't have my first minority teacher until 9th grade. Kindergarten, I can't remember her name, white lady. 1st grade, Miss Choquette, white lady. 2nd grade, Miss Marcotte, white lady. 3rd lady, Miss Wilson, white lady. 4th grade, Miss Garvey, white lady. 5th grade, Miss Raynon, white lady. 6th grade, Miss DiFormato, white lady. 7th grade is when we started doing split classes. Social studies, Mr. Thompson, white guy. Math, Miss Carnavale, white girl, white lady, right? Science, Mr. Trahan, white guy. English, Miss O'Neill, white girl. 8th grade, same thing. I had Miss O'Neill again, Miss Carnavale, Mr. Trahan, all white. Freshman year, I had Mrs. Grant, my English teacher, black woman from Central Falls. Shout out to her. You know who she is? Viola Davis's sister.
Whoa.
Viola Davis is from my hometown, Central Falls. Well, she's from South Carolina. She moved to Central Falls when she was 10. Yeah. So she reps CF hard. Yeah. That's her sister. Ms. Grant. Ms. Grant was my first woman of color, person of color teacher.
Yeah.
And like, again, at the time, like, you don't know. You just assume teachers are supposed to be white. I don't know. Like, but it's just wild to me, man. Like, that was the case. And I honestly can't even remember what other teachers I had that were persons of color after that.
I've only had one teacher who was of color, and this was in college, and she taught me Swahili.
Oh, wow.
Kaduma. This was the only professor, white, or that's not true. Let me take that back. There was another one I had in, I can't think of his name, in sports studies or something. But growing up as far as high school, there was not a single black teacher that I ever had. The only 2 black teachers, guess what subjects they taught? Miss Craig taught special ed, and Mr. D. Johnette, he drove the bus and was the detention teacher. So special ed detention, the only 2 black educators in the whole school. Everybody else was white.
That's wild.
And that was normal to me. But you say that, and I think that's almost what got me to the point where, like, okay, I'm always going to be under the management of somebody white.
Right.
And
this is deep-rooted shit, bro.
Like, that is crazy. Like, even to this day, like, I've only had one black manager.
So we think about it. Yeah, I've had a black manager too, and it was the guy, my boy, who I say my boy, he's my boy, and even when he was my manager, he was my boy. But like, there's a level of, man, there's so many different ways and directions we can go into, and again, this is all just on the fly conversations. Like, we're just like realizing shit, and I think the message here, at least, and let me not speak for you, the message and the reason why I'm talking about these things is not to make anybody feel bad. That's not what this is about. But I think it's to open up maybe people's eyes that don't realize, like, life and the people you see in it that hold leadership positions is such a pivotal and instrumental part of your life. And there's things that you just don't even recognize or acknowledge or see that people of color, for lack of a better word, have to go through and have to see and have to experience. And it's a completely different world that I'd like to open people's eyes up to, I guess, in a sense.
Just to acknowledge, like, hey, let me ask you this, because I've never had this happen. Would you feel comfortable if you had a new white manager, he pulled you aside and said, hey, Derek, I know you're the only person of color on the team or in the office. How would you want me to communicate with you, or how would you want me to engage with you? Would that make you feel?
I would be taken aback, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that's refreshing for me. I kind of genuinely do feel that's refreshing, because again, I think people say race isn't a problem if I don't talk about it.
Exactly.
And that is a problem.
Now, now that part we do agree on.
Yes.
Just
and I don't mean like like, you don't have to remind someone that they're a person of color at every turn, or try to culturally appropriate to try to make them feel comfortable, or you think what you perceive will make them feel comfortable. Because at the end of the day, we are all individuals. Mm-hmm. And so I want to acknowledge that this conversation isn't about separating people into groups, because that's not what we're trying to do. We've already been separated into groups by America, just to be clear. It's already happened. So let's not, like, so when we talk about it, we're just acknowledging what the reality is that we've already been separated into groups. But it's got to go further than that and understand that we are all individuals. But if someone were to come up to me and say that, a manager, like, I would take that in stride, and I'd be like, yeah, I appreciate that. We can talk about it. But don't come up to me every day and be like, hey, by the way, did you have some fried beans today? Like, I don't need y'all. Like, don't be doing that shit. But, like, if you want to address in the beginning, be like, hey, is there anything that I should be aware of? Like I respect that. Okay. I would. Yeah. How about you?
I think I would welcome it, but it would be different. I've never had that.
I think it's more of a shock.
Yeah, I think I would.
Because we're not used to it.
Yeah, exactly. I've never had that happen, but It would be welcoming. And it's just, I think that, you know, we talked about race last week. We talked about gender and masculinity. I'm assuming that, I won't say assume, I probably feel that women probably feel the same way if they've been undermanaged, you know, nothing but men. And not saying that you need to be speaking to differently, but just is understanding like, hey, I acknowledge what the reality of the situation is. I want to make you feel safe, comfortable on this team. Is there anything that, you know, I can do to accommodate that? And I think that is a powerful way to go about that. And maybe that is something. But I also see where people are like, oh, so I'm supposed to treat you differently. And is that not tying back into race?
But I don't think that's about treating anybody differently necessarily. But like, because it's a cultural thing. Like if your whole team's white, yes, they're all individuals, right? And you all treat them in the same way in the sense of get your work done and let's do this done properly. That doesn't change. But there's a different culture behind it all. Yeah. Like the black culture is the black culture, right? Latino culture is a Latino culture. That's right. It's not white culture. And yes, we can all be from different parts and there's different subcultures from there. But there's a shared experience that black people have that white people don't have. Agreed. There's a shared experience that black people have that Latino people don't have, right? Yep. So there is a level of like, how can I meet you in a certain point? It's the same reason. It's almost the same as saying people have religious exceptions, and like if you're a Muslim, we should reserve a room for you to pray in your daily thing. Like that's not treating somebody differently. That's what their culture is. Mm-hmm. That's all it's about. Yeah. And for people to, if anything, feel offended by that, I think it says more about you and you know.
Well, you get those people out there, like you said, they want to say that like racism. I don't see color, I see gray, and that right there, I feel like is an issue because I see color. Like I'm not blind. Like hell, I could look at you and tell that you're not black or white. Like now, I guess not in the beginning, but like I could look at you and tell you're not a white person, and I'm not. 100%. You can look at me and tell that I'm not a white person. So it's not or a male, or a female, or any physical characteristics that we have that you can observe with your eyes. I think it's just about how, again, it's all about how we're going to treat you. It doesn't matter what effect does it have, and I don't think it should have any effect.
I think a lot of people who say that have good intentions, and I acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. They're coming from a good place. But a lot of times what I hear when someone says, I don't see color, I see someone as the same, is that you don't see me, and that you want to ignore the experience that I have to live through in America. Mm-hmm. Because there is an experience.
Oh, yeah.
That you live in America that a lot of people don't live in America. It's the same thing as a woman lives a completely different experience than a man in America. Yeah. I'm not going to go up to you as a woman and be like, I don't see gender. You are just a genderless blob. Mm-hmm. Nah, you're a female. I see you as a woman.
Yep. Yeah.
And I respect you as a woman, right? I think it's the same thing with race.
Absolutely. I'm with you there.
I also think like to be like, we're all the same in the sense that we're all human beings 100%. But to be like, I don't see any color, that's like saying like, I got a salad, right? Think about a salad, your favorite salad you like to eat. For me, I like my greens. I like some carrots in there. I like some cucumber. I like some dressing, some crouton. Got to have some crouton. Some bacon bits, all right? All these ingredients put in my salad. I'm not going to then put my salad to a blender and make it a fucking milkshake so it's all the same and drink. That's disgusting.
It's all going to the same place.
It's all going to the same place though, right? Right? That's people's thing. And it's like, nah, that probably tastes nasty. Nah, I want it all together in the same bowl.
The flavors. Mm-hmm.
And they all have equal rights to get into my mouth because I'm going to eat it. But that's how it tastes better.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's the way I see America.
Yeah.
Like, we are all the same in the sense that we are all human beings, but we are all different.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that I know, a hot topic in America right now is the whole DEI stuff and how that's been weaponized, and like it sucks that has happened to where it's almost like for you and I, and correct me if I'm wrong, like we aren't special. I'll say like, I don't feel like I'm special. Sorry. I'm not special. Like I'm just a kid who grew up, went to college, works in corporate America. It's the exact same thing that a lot of our coworkers did, except they're all white. So to our community, they may feel like, we talked about this before, that, we're doing things that are special, and we talked about imposter syndrome, how we feel like we're not. I feel like that for them, when they're seeing us, maybe they try to act like, and we spoke again, like they try to say like, oh, there must be special.
Yeah.
How did you get here?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I have a story of how I got there, and it may be a little unique than others, but I don't feel like I'm not a crazy IQ person. Like it's not like that. It's not like I've got some crazy skill that my other relatives don't have or don't possess and couldn't be here. You know, I was fortunate enough to God given, you know, talents in certain aspects physically, but like, it's not like I'm doing anything that's like,
right.
I'm not super special to be in just working in corporate America as a sales rep.
And you don't want to bear that on your responsibility on your shoulders either. You already bear enough on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And for someone to be like, oh, this person's super special, and it's like, no, bro, I'm just a regular dude that just did like you did, and I made it here, and like that's it. Like let's just like, I think there is a level of, and not that I've ever felt this before, because I you know, I'll be completely transparent. I don't remember feeling direct racism or anything like that in my life necessarily. A couple of times on the soccer field, I've been called a spick or whatever the case is.
That's so crazy.
Getting very normal to me at the time, because similar to you, like we were the only Latino team in Rhode Island, Latino team, and we were playing against a bunch of white, and like shit was said.
Yep.
And you know, parents would look at us differently and shit like that growing up. Like even growing up on the teams that I was on, when I ended up playing really competitive, getting really good, playing on club teams, there was money that was involved that I couldn't pay. So I was on scholarship and I was one of 2 or 3 little Latinos on the team. And it was like, I felt a lot of times, and look, I had some great times on my soccer teams because there were some rich kids on my team. When I got to sleep over their place, it was a fucking, bro, they had a soccer court in their basement, bro. I'm like, you got a soccer court in your basement? I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. What?
It's like court like this big.
Yeah, dog. Like they literally had carpet. Like, it was the most fun thing, and they treated me awesome. But even during that time, I always felt like it was a little of like, you know, the Fresh Air program where they bring inner city kids to the country or whatever the case is.
I've never heard of this.
You never heard of that?
I'm from the country.
They do that shit. That's true. They do that shit like in the cities in New York, like shit. And they're like, oh, we're gonna bring them to the nice like suburbs and like the rules and shit like that. Like that's how I felt they were treating me. They were looking at me like this little minority, this little Latino from Central Falls, Rhode Island. We're gonna bring them to Coventry. We're gonna bring them to Burrville. These are all really nice places. Barrington, show them a good time, and they were always very sweet. But I always thought there was a part of them that maybe felt bad for me, which, you know, is unfortunate. And you know, at the time I didn't pay too much attention to it, but like that's the reality of it. And I also did feel like, in many instances, you know, there's folks that I was friends with in college and blah 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 that like didn't view me as Latino like that. Have you ever had that? Or like, you're not black like that. You're like, oh no, you're my boy, but you're not like them.
Oh, absolutely.
Man, have I felt that so many times. Like I was the token.
Yes.
Like, nah, you're cool. We're cool there. You're cool. Like you're smart. You're here in this school. You're here in this job.
Yes.
Like you're not like those Latinos, man. That shit boils my blood, man.
Oh my gosh. And I've had people come up and say that, and they mean it. I won't say mean it. They're stating that as a compliment.
Yeah, they think it's a compliment.
They think it's a compliment.
Right.
Like, oh man, thank you. Yeah, like, and it's like, I know what you're saying. Like, I know you want. I assume the intentions are well, but it also is kind of like, bruh.
And again, this is the shit that is dealt with by a lot of people of color in this country.
Oh yeah.
You know, and you know, to be clear, black people have more of a deep rooted sentiment with this country, considering what happened in America in from 1619 till, some might argue today, right? But so there's a completely different struggle that's there too. So I'm not even here trying to compare like the Latino struggle necessarily with that, but there is, especially now with the rhetoric going on with the Trump administration around immigration and shit like that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
shit is wild. But let me circle back to the story that I did want to say that I mean, it's been a good conversation, so I appreciate it. But like, a lot of the reason why I have not even a lot of the reasons, because as I grew up, I started recognizing and acknowledging a lot of things that were going on in this country, and specifically when I worked in DC in politics, and I just started seeing the systems that were in place that still keep minorities down. And it's not just black and Latinos, it's the indigenous population. Jesus Christ.
I mean,
they've been fucked over terribly.
I mean, you look at some of the old, I don't want to direct that, but like, if you go and look up like the history that we have with the indigenous people of America, I don't want to say Native Americans, but like, I guess for easy, like, and for Native Americans, like they got fucked over so bad.
It was the Trail of Tears. This country has a long-standing relationship, long-standing marriage, I might argue, with racism. And I think that's an ugly truth that we all have to come to terms with. Everybody in this country. Because this country loves to celebrate the wins from 150 years ago, but they hate confronting the losses and the ugliness that happened 150 years ago. Like, how many people do you see celebrating 4th of July going crazy.
All the time.
We got our independence.
America.
Bitch, you weren't even part of that shit. You weren't even part of that. But then the minute we start talking about slavery, they're like, oh, it was so long ago. What do you mean? You weren't even there. What does it matter? And it's like, oh, you want to celebrate shit that you weren't there for that was good, but you don't want to acknowledge and confront the stuff that was bad because you weren't there. There's a lot of hypocrisy about it, but we need to be level set about it. Like racism is racism. It's the reality, and it's in the fabric of this country, and it can change. And that doesn't mean that everyone is racist or every white person. That's not what I mean. Absolutely not. But I think that's the first step to acknowledge it. Anyways, a lot of reasons when I was saying that was when I was in corporate America after I worked in politics and I saw a lot of things. I started becoming super hyper aware, and this is the original woke that I would say. I started becoming woke to the shit that was real that I had acknowledged, but I didn't really pay much mind to it. I kind of mind my business, and I'm like, yo, this shit's crazy. And one weekend, a couple of my coworkers at my company were like, yo, I got this lake house up in Vermont. You want to come through? I said, yeah, I'm gonna pull through. And then a couple of white guys. So I pulled through, and it was maybe 5-6 white guys, and it was just me. I had a blast. They were all cool with me. We're all cool. Like, whatever, cool. We got drunk, had a good time. The last day we were having a discussion about race, and it was getting a little heated because I was clearly very progressive, and they were very conservative. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this shit's crazy. And then one of the dudes, who was a manager at the time, who was a district manager, and who everyone looked up to and everyone fucking hung on his ball sack all the time, dude's like, you know what? Like my dad always says, I don't dislike black people. I just hate. What? He dropped the N-bomb in front of me. In front of me, in front of everybody. And my jaw dropped. Everybody was just like, I looked at everybody else to see what the reaction would be. And motherfuckers were like, I was like. And to this day, that's my biggest regret that I didn't say anything. But I was so concerned about if I popped off, what it would look like in the office the next day. Mm-hmm. He was in a position of power. He was in with the good boys. It was all just white folks around me. And I'm like, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? My job would be on the line. And to this day, that's one of my biggest regrets, that I didn't say shit.
Damn, bro, that is...
Just dropped it just like that.
Man, I mean, I've been called in with the ER too. Like,
he said it with the ER, with the hard ER. And he thought he was saying something all enlightening. And it's like, so to this day, fuck that guy.
100%.
I don't fuck with him. I had a buddy of mine that was gonna go work for him later on, and I was like, don't work for him. That motherfucker's a racist. Yep. Like, you don't want to go work for him. And I saw the dude a couple of times after, because I stayed with the company for a while, and he was always like, again, nice guy to my face, but it was just like, bro, come on, bro. Are you kidding me, dog? Like, and again, like, I feel bad about that. Like, I feel bad that I didn't say something. That's the complicity shit like that. Like, he's never been checked. He's been enabled his whole life to think that he can say that. And even though I'm not black, but to a person of color, yep, because you're all around your boys and because I'm at your lake house, like there was just so much entitlement that came with that, man. And man, to this day, that boils my blood. And like, after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm never gonna let that happen again. Mm-hmm. Like never gonna let that happen again. Like I can't live with myself.
Do you recognize when we were out? Like, have you had instances like this since then with people, white people saying the N-word, and not even in a? For instance, I'll say this. I've definitely had friends with some white boys, and as they get more comfortable, get comfortable, I could feel it coming too. I'm like, oh, man, here we go. And sure enough, whether it's just in a comment, like we could just be together, and they just try to like test and see if they can get that one off and say it, and then look and see how I'm going to react to it. And of course, every time they say, I'm going to be like, bro, come on now. And like, oh, no, I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like that. And they saying it like with the either rapping it or like something like that. And I'm like, man. And they be like, oh, no, I grew up, in an urban environment. I got black friends. I know they allowed me to say it. And that's why I'm like, I'm not ever here. Like, I ain't saying like I'm going to like check you, but I will say around me, I don't want to hear nobody white saying it. But I will say this too. I even get when I hear anybody that's, I don't say not black, but like I feel like anybody's not black. Like when I hear Hispanics saying it, and I'll be playing softball and I hear them saying, and they're saying it to each other. I'm like, and I get it. It's
so this is a good topic because this plays in because I've said it around her before, especially in the beginning when I met her. And I've tried to eliminate that word from my vocabulary because I just don't think it's conducive anymore. But where I grew up, and again, this is not an excuse, but because I grew up with a bunch of black people and brown people, like we said it to each other all the time. On all my black, like it was just like my boy, my guy. Like it was so normal to me.
Yeah.
Like so normal to me that I got into college. I would say it even around the black people that I met there, the Jamaicans and blah, blah, like still normal. And even when I go home sometimes, people still be saying it. Like, because I don't live there anymore, but like they're still around. They still say it. Yeah. And it's like the Latinos or the light skin that they don't even look black. Cape Verdeans, my friends, they say it all the time. So I do find that interesting, but I do know that I used to say it around you all the time. 100%.
Yeah. Like I say, I'll say... when I hear people saying like, but it ain't like something like a cringe. It's just kind of like I hear it. I hear it. But I also am a person where I don't try to say it around people that aren't black. Let's get back to the code switching and things like that. Like how I communicate with my family and other minorities, I'm willing to say it. But if I'm around like white people, I
make the word. You're cognizant.
I make the decision to filter that word out, and not use that word, and that's just part of like again, only because I don't want to hear them use it, then get comfortable thinking that they could
because you were using it, and I get that, and I think at the end of the day, that's something people got to respect 100%. Like
now, if I said the S word, would if not in a
that's word. That's word. It's only derogatory. There's no equivalent of like.
Okay. That's not something that y'all speak. Okay.
No, that's straight up.
Okay.
That's just straight up like that is a straight up derogatory term.
All right.
We fighting.
Yeah. Okay.
People fighting.
I didn't know if that was like if it was
amongst us that we would say like that, similar to what you're saying with the N word. Yeah. No. That's not a thing. No, that's not a thing.
No. But I mean, it all goes back, and I know a lot of this ties into just the urban culture, and it is a affirmation for the culture that some people do. How people use that word. They grew up like in your instance, like in the Northeast, like y'all grew up with the hip hop and all that type of stuff. It's very different than if it's somebody from the South that uses that, because it has a very like I'm from the Bible Belt, and it's so funny to me that being from the Bible Belt is also the most racist part of the U.S.
And it's the Bible Belt.
And it's the Bible Belt.
Where you're supposed to love your neighbor.
Well, here's what I was talking. You want to talk about growing up and knowing about racism? The reason why parents were saying that their kids couldn't date, interracially date, is because they were saying that God didn't want them. God was against interracial dating, because when they were building the Tower of Babylon to get to heaven in the Bible, that's when he gave people different colors, different races, different tongues, and spoke different languages, and that was the whole thing. Was their interpretation of that was that God didn't want our races to mix, they would hide behind being racist and not wanting their daughters to date black guys, saying that is because because God said it's a sin.
Some folks,
that is literally, preachers were preaching this where I grew up in Mayflower, Arkansas. That literally,
that's wild. Some folks will twist themselves in a pretzel to rationalize whatever they want to rationalize, to believe whatever they think they want to believe makes them feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. And just saying, like, this, it's crazy that you could have religion like you're supposed to be, Jesus and all that. I grew up with the whole white-eyed, blue-eyed, brown hair, gold hair, blonde hair Jesus is in them. And even in black churches, like I grew up with that for a long time, and then it did eventually change. But like even just having like religion, almost like growing up as a kid, to think that even God doesn't even want us to be, it is a sin to date. As a kid, you can see how influential that could be. Luckily, I came from a strong my family was a very strong black family, and honestly, the one thing that I feel like I was able to one thing that influenced how I look at it, and maybe why I didn't have such an impact on race or looking at white people being superior to me, is that because I came from a very poor, small town in Arkansas. Like everybody was quote unquote poor, white, black, everybody's lower class. I don't say poor. Everybody was lower class. And then through the 90s, when Clinton got into office, like I got to see the boom of my family, and like my parents, and also even people in my whole community kind of took a huge boom when it came to like working in factories. We're getting paid good money working in these factories. They started getting good jobs. So like we were starting to, like, our family was making money, and I would go to school, and the white people weren't. Like I literally came to where like I was, like I say, my parents were doing better than 99% of the people in my school. Wow. So like for me, I would go to these white people houses, unlike what you went to, and they were living in trailers, rusty trailers. I would see like they have nice Doc Martens. They were wearing the Doc Martens, Birkenstocks, lucky things, and I would go to their house and I'm like, oh hell no, y'all are poor. Like literally thinking that you people are poor. So I think that curved me to where I didn't see white people as superior to me. Never. I always felt like we were on the same level, or like down the people white people I grew up around, we all were like poor and uneducated. So in a certain sense, I almost felt like shit, I'm doing way better than them. Like
I mean, at this point, but at this point, we're talking about classism, and classism is a real thing. Like,
absolutely.
No matter what color skin you are, it's a real thing. Absolutely. But the reality is, and I think that's an excuse for a lot of people to say that racism isn't real because look at these white people that are poor. Yeah, there's a lot of white people that are poor that live in trailers, 100%. But at the end of the day, they still have the privilege of their skin to walk out on the street and not be stopped by a cop necessarily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's certain privileges, but I get what you're saying, because in my instance too, in my city, if you were white too, you were poor too, 100%. The problem is I live in Rhode Island. It's so small. The city next over is a rich city, and it's all white, and that's 5 minutes away.
Then I got
to see that.
Yep. I saw. Well, then I go outside my city and I see like white people lived at or Conway, Little Rock, things like that. And I'm like, they got a 2-story house. They rich. Like, okay.
Listen, sports, soccer opened up my eyes to a lot of shit too. Absolutely. Like, I got to travel. I saw a lot. Like I said, I was the fresh country city boy that was in these my teammates' houses that have these big ass houses, the soccer field in the basement. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. So I think that soccer probably is a sport where you do have a lot of, in this country. It's probably not. I mean, it's probably a little bit of the diversity of soccer in this country is a lot of white people, but also brown.
Yeah. And
I think the diversity that I dealt with on a football team is a lot of white and black. Like, so we both dealing kind of like those. The two the diversities in it. But I think on a football team, the thing I think that's great about being on a football team was that you have white people that are rich. You have white people that are poor. You got black people that are rich, and you got black people that are poor because there's just so many people. Like once I got to Iowa, that I think you forced to have a diversity, and you forced to get to know people of different ethnicities, of different backgrounds, whether that's they come from Chicago, inner city, or the suburbs of Chicago, or if they're from Florida, or if they're from South Dakota. Like so you get I got that good diversity, I feel like, but I also feel like that kind of helped me also feel comfortable being in situations that come full circle, like being in corporate America, being comfortable around white people, comfortable being the only black person in a room around a whole lot of white people.
I would say comfortable, because I just think it's something you got comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I think that's the reality, because I got comfortable being uncomfortable, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah. Do you have family members that couldn't be like? I have family members that could not thrive in a situation where there wasn't in this type of situation.
I don't know about family members. I can't think of anyone on the top of my head necessarily. I think any family members. I've got a bunch of really successful family members that are in corporate America and can do that shit too. So,
let me ask you this: do you have people back home have you ever been accused of speaking white or talking white?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I've been accused of.
Same. And y'all have heard me 7 episodes deep speak. I don't think I have anything that sounds like I speak like white. But
you so
even
Arkansas,
still,
bro. I mean, what's the difference between someone from Mayflower that's white that speaks compared to you?
I think they're just basing it off of like speaking proper, quote unquote.
Correct. That's what it
they're
is. That
saying
corporate
like,
shit.
I'll speak. And this is from family members. They're like, oh, you speaking white? You're like, I'm not even close to speaking white. If you heard the word that Derek used earlier in this episode, then that let you know what my vocabulary is.
Effervescent, baby. Effervescent.
He's back to back. two times. So
let me ask you a question before we sunset this talk, because it's been a great talk, and we're already pretty much at an hour, which is crazy, but it's been a great conversation. Do you believe, and this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people, but I want to make sure we touch on this. Do you believe in reverse racism?
No.
So let's level set.
Mm-hmm.
What is the definition of racism?
To me?
To you, sure.
I would say that racism is systematic discrimination against a specific, race or a specific color, skin.
Yeah. So the systems institutions and policies that are put into place.
It's not necessarily the words. I'm not caught up in the verbiage, but the thing like not being able to go and get a home loan.
Correct.
Like the GI Bill that they did when the back in the 70s, 80s, I guess, or not 70s,
40s,
80s, but or the GI Bill
what
they
did after World War II.
Exactly. There we go.
Yeah.
That that type of thing, the redlining that they've done, that they still do to today. Even. You hear real estate. You hear a lot of black real estate people talk about like showcasing their home and how they get appraised, get lower appraisals than they do their neighbors just because they're black, or they're showing off their home and they're struggling to get someone to purchase it because people see the pictures and they see it's a black family that lives there.
Our prison systems, our justice system,
all those things. That's where the race. That's
racism. I agree with you, and this is I 100% agree. This is why when anyone says that racism, you could be reverse racism, not true. Now, there's such thing as racial prejudice.
Absolutely,
100%.
There you go.
A Latino can hate a white person.
Absolutely,
and that's racial prejudice. But when you're not the race or the ethnicity that has the power to actually do anything about it, which in this country, Latinos are not, blacks are not, white people are, there's no such thing as reverse racism. And I know that might touch some of you in a certain way. I apologize, but that's the reality of it. Now, am I saying racial prejudice is right? No, I'm not saying that. I don't think if you don't have any reason, you shouldn't do that. But I'm less concerned about that than I am about the systems, the policies, and the institutions that are still in play today.
And that's
and that's really important. So I'm glad we touched on that. So, look, man, great conversation.
We'll bookmark it here, but I think we definitely have a lot.
We got a lot more to talk on it. Again, these are our opinions, and also we're talking about just our experiences and just like what we've been through. And none of this is to point out or to say anything bad about white people or anything like that.
No.
There's nothing about it.
The boy over here got a white girlfriend and everything.
Yeah, so you got a white girlfriend too. Yeah,
and I got white friends. Don't get that. I have white friends, males, females. Genuine white friends, males and females.
None to do that. None about making anybody feel bad. But we're just talking about our experience and genuinely what we think our opinions are about all that stuff. Now, let's go into one of my favorite segments here. I'm going to talk a little bit about something fun that we want to learn about, or something we just did learn about, or anything like that.
So you made a comment that you were going to speak on.
The race thing.
That going to be the race thing. I want to hear yours first because I have a sneaky suspicion that we may have the same thing.
Okay.
Because we don't go over what our topic is going to be for this.
We talked about it.
For this, so
we talked about it. So, in the United States of America, do you know what the population of Latinos are in this country? The percentage?
No, I don't. Okay.
That's 19.7%.
Really?
Latinos, yeah.
Okay.
In this country. Okay. You know how much is white?
Nope.
71%.
Okay.
That's not right. I think it's 61%.
Okay, yeah.
It's like 61% or something.
Give us our 13.
Do you know what black is? Yes. It's 13.7, 14%, right around there. Okay. Do you know the percentage of Latino-owned businesses?
No.
7.9%.
Okay.
Black-owned businesses in this country? 3%.
Misrepresentation.
So you want to talk about institutions, systems in play that perpetuate racism? That's a huge indicator right there. Because if everything was fair and balanced, if everyone had the equal opportunities that we claim to have in this country, black people would own 14% of businesses. Latinos would own 19% of businesses. Period, point blank. And that's not the case.
And if it was within a margin of error, that would be okay.
Okay.
So my stat I had was of the, as of 2024, what percentage of Fortune 500 companies are led by black CEOs? 1.6%. 8. If you want me to give you the number.
8 out of 500.
8 out of 500. And again, you talk about the representation of blacks, 13.6, 14%.
It should be.
It should be somewhere close. We're talking about 1.6. I said, okay, let's go even deeper. Let's go one step deeper. Let's not talk about CEOs. Let's just talk about C-level, C-suite positions. Blacks hold about 8% of those. A lot better, right? A lot better.
Yeah.
But it's a caveat. What roles within the C-suite do you think black people hold? And I'm going to give you the letters.
Diversity and inclusion.
Do you know what a CDO is?
Chief Diversity Officer.
What the hell is that? 22% of, that's where we get, that's what's tied into this, this.
That's what inflates the 8%.
8%. 22% of black roles or black people have 22% of
C-suite of CDO roles in the C-suite.
Yep. So again, now we're over representation. The other one, CHRO, human resources. But you don't see us in those CFOs, CROs, COOs, COOs. You don't see the ones that really have those
CTOs,
all of those. That is where we at. They put us in these type of roles right there. So that's my stat of the day is that of the Fortune 500 companies, 8.
And we didn't even really touch too much on DEI. And again, story for another day. But man, that flew.
Look down like, please, thank you guys for staying with us.
Yeah, I was nervous about having that conversation, but fuck it, it's our podcast. Talk whatever the fuck we want to talk about.
But leave the comments, whether it's your experiences with racism, whether that's something that we said that you want to comment on, for or against, however you feel about it. Just
open book.
And one thing you will see, I brought this up earlier, that we do want to engage with you guys. So leave the comments, and we'll start engaging with you back. But please continue to like, share, comment. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a good time, man. Thank you all for tuning in, Herb. Man, as always, brother. Good show.
Again.
Wilder.
Boom.